שלום לכולם. אני מעבירה הרצאה באנגלית. כולם יודעים אנגלית, אז אין בעיה. וואו, יש פה אש, זה בדיוק בשביל ההרצאה שלי. Preventive textile conservation. When we are talking about preventive textile conservation, it's all activities aimed to delay the aging of textile works of art, protecting them from unnatural degradation in storage, exhibition, and handling. Textile and costumes are the most sensitive items in museum collections. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, about my experience and works that I've done, because I'm sure that not everybody knows me. So I'm 40 years in conservation work, in textile conservation 40 years, in object conservation 20 years. 10 years before immigrating to Israel, I worked in the Pushkin Museum of Fine Arts in Moscow with hundreds of European tapestries and over 300 of Coptic textiles. In Israel, I worked in Israel Antiquities Authority, Museum of Jewish Art, and the Israel Museum Jerusalem. In private practice with the Yad Vashem, Rishon LeZion Museum, Islamic Museum, Wolfson and Diaspora Museums, Baha'i World Center, Beit Weizmann, and many others. I want to give you a few examples of my work. For example, in Israel Antiquities Authority, I worked with many textiles from Masada. This is before restoration, and this is after. One of the main projects in Israel Antiquities Authority was 4 linen textiles from Cave of the Warrior, 6,000 years old. And one of them is unique for the whole world because of its size. Like more old textiles were found in the world, but size like that of 6,000 years old were not found. So the size is 2 by 7 meters. And this is after conservation. In Yad Vashem, I restored tapestry of 18th century. One second. So you see, actually it's obvious, but still I want to show. This is before fragment, this is after restoration, and this is a general view. In the Italian Museum of Jewish Art in Jerusalem, I worked with many Judaic textiles from Italy, and this is fragment of Torah mantle before restoration and after. In Israel Museum Jerusalem, I worked only with ceramic, stone, and glass, and I was responsible for archaeological glass gallery for renewed museum. And I consider the main project in this with windows from Beit Sha'an, that this is before restoration. Nobody knew what will come out from this, and those are windows from Beit Sha'an. It's 6th, 7th century, and they are exhibited now, like from 2010. Now we are talking about textiles. Textiles can be archaeological textiles, tapestries, carpets, embroideries, laces, hand-printed, machine-printed, knitted textiles, costumes, and all kinds of accessories, like shoes from textiles, gloves, bags, and more. Textiles are made from fibers, cellulose fibers like cotton and linen, protein fibers, wool and silk, and man-made like acetate and nylon, and others. Causes of damage of textiles. Physical forces, use and wear, water, pests, insects and mold, pollutants and dust, light and ultraviolet, incorrect temperature, incorrect relative humidity, and incorrect handling. Fiber damage may lead to fading, change of color, yellowing, brittleness, and breakage. And now I will show few examples of each of these damages. For example, this is physical forces, use and wear, obvious. Wrong handling. For example, this kerchief was folded, and sharp creases along folds may lead to tearing, holes, and splits, and that's what happened. Water. Accidental wetting from floods, leaks, and other incidents may result in shrinkage, loss of flexibility, stretching, and tears, soiling from dirty water, stains from running dyes. Bacteria may be present in textiles, and mold may appear. You can see it. Pests and insects. Textiles is a good food source for some insects, and they provide a habitat. Clothes moths and carpet beetle larvae are particularly damaging. They perforate the costume wool. They perforate and consume wool or other protein fiber. They can also attack silk, cotton, and synthetics if soils are present. Holes and other signs of insect activity include actual larvae, insects, webs, and fecal pellets, larva skins, and eggs. This is what, when you see it, you should be alert. This is an example of silverfish, and insects like silverfish or cockroaches will damage fabrics to get to a food source. This is carpet beetle. Mold. Textiles can be attacked by mold. Mold may appear inside the frame textiles if the glass is placed on the textile without a gap. Humidity goes inside the frame and condensates on the inner surface of the frame on the glass, and it leads to mold. I don't know if you can see. This area, like fog, it was mold. Pollutants. Dust, soil, water, and oil from perspiration or during use when handling with bare hands. Gases, pollutants result from industrial waxel and other types of emission effects dyes, which may result in fading. Gases emitted by materials within the museum include acid from wood, coatings, acidic tissue paper, and storage materials, and more. Display recommendations. Any object with added pigments is considered sensitive. Controlled display environment should be temperature between 18 and 22 degrees Celsius, relative humidity between 50 and 55%, and light 50 lux. Ultraviolet radiation should be eliminated in all galleries. Lighting within showcases must be cold. Minimum duration of exposure or infrared sensors. Archaeological textiles should not be exhibited more than 3-4 months. Curators should prepare groups of similar objects in these categories to provide rotation between them. Display, taking care of relative humidity. I decided to show these slides because not every museum has climate control. And this is example how we are changing package of framed scrolls, Dead Sea scrolls, but it can be, and there were also textiles, for transferring them to the museum without climate control. So this is this package, and scroll is sewn, but it could be the textile as well, sewn between transparent textiles, and we open the package, install silica gel, seal it all around, and then from San Francisco we went to Vatican. Vatican Museum had no climate control back then. I don't know what's up now. This is example that the very sensitive object that is on the in the showcase here, and we decided to put silica gel in the drawer. Oops. What should I do?
Escape.
Okay. Inserting silica gel in the drawer to the on the bottom of the showcase, and I'm responsible for changing it from time to time. So it's for sensitive objects. Light and ultraviolet. Exposure to light, both visible and ultraviolet, can deteriorate textiles. Light damage is cumulative and irreversible. All components of light are harmful. UV radiation is considered more damaging to organic textile fibers, causing yellowing, weakening, and disintegration, fading of dyes. UV radiation is found in high proportion in daylight. It's also present in high-intensity discharge lamps, and it's absent in most LEDs. Infrared radiation in the form of heat is also critical for natural aging. To measure amount of light on the textile, you should use light meter. Fiber damage. Damage to fibers is caused mainly by UV radiation, by weakening of fibers. I said about this already. Of the natural fibers, flax is the most resistant to light damage, visible and UV, and silk is the most sensitive. Fading. The fading of colors is the most obvious form of light damage to textiles. Most natural dyes are highly sensitive. The degree of fading is best seen by comparing exposed areas to those that have been protected from light, such as the front and back of, for example, embroidery. Here you can see example of yellowing and fading, and this light damage is cumulative and irreversible. Yellowing is an indication that fibers have undergone exposure to light, particularly UV radiation. Very often yellowing is noticeable along the lines of folds. In this case you see it's a pillow under the pillow. Change of color of the 17th century tapestry, for example. Some colors change hue as the more fugitive colored components fade away. Originally, the foliage would have appeared green, but over time, the more fugitive yellow dye has faded away, leaving the more light-fast blue dye, indigo. I want to show a very short movie about video about modern high technology. Maybe you know, but it's really in place. I'm not sure that some Israeli museums have it. Sorry. So we go back now.
We indicate watching chamber in Hamburg Palace, where 7th, 16th century tapestries line the walls. This is the first time smart technologies are used in a historic building to protect collections from increased light exposure. As you can see, there is a large number of sensors in front of the tapestries to capture any information about the environment, about moisture levels, light levels, even dust deposition on our tapestries. when we collected this information, we discovered that the light levels were very high. The smart thin film is a plastic material that has liquid crystals, and it can change from opaque to transparent depending on the electricity that is passing through. As this is a grade 1 listed building, we could not use any fixtures on the historic fabric. So we had to devise a method which was completely reversible. We used lightweight aluminum frames, which are pressure fixed on the recesses of the windows. And we have devised an app in a tablet, and we can change the timings that the windows can become clear or opaque depending on the season. So we have a different setting for winter time where the light levels are not very high, and another one for summertime where, of course, the light is very strong.
Now we'll talk about incorrect temperature, like in storage and in display. Very important to use a hygrothermograph or data logger for continuous recording of relative humidity and temperature fluctuations. High temperatures increase the rate of deterioration of all organic materials, especially silk. Low temperatures, like 5 degrees Celsius and lower, have many benefits for textiles. Low temperature becomes a problem only when it causes high relative humidity and damp. Incorrect relative humidity. Textiles are hygroscopic, meaning that they absorb and release water vapor from the air as the relative humidity fluctuates. At very high relative humidity levels, fibers swell, adhesives may fail, dyes may transfer, mold may grow, and metal trim may corrode and stain adjoining fabric. High relative humidity also accelerates the fading of many dyes by light. At low relative humidity, fibers shrink as they release water vapor. This swelling and shrinking is not healthy for the textiles by weakening textile fibers. During the winter, heating without humidification leads to low relative humidity and textiles become brittle. Preventive conservation strategies for textiles and costumes. Handling. Wash hands before working with textiles or wear clean gloves during handling to avoid soiling by the hands. Handle textiles only when necessary, making gentle, planned movements, thus minimizing the risk of physical damage to objects. Provide flat supports or custom mounts large enough to adequately support the entire textile before moving it. Pack textiles with needed cushioning. Handle the flat support, hanger, or mount rather than the textile itself. Provide custom support for handling oversized textiles. Plan any move beforehand and prepare the storage area or display in advance of moving a large textile into it. Rolls or tubes are helpful. We'll see it a bit later. Oversized textiles often require 2 or more people to transport them or install to transport them or install them for display or storage. This is video. Also, okay, where is it? It's also not long one.
Boxes are a great way to store your textiles. And in this case, what I love about boxes,
sorry.
Fairly high on your shelf and use every available inch of space. Also, because a box is closed, it blocks out dirt and light and also protects against insect infestation. Finally, boxes are the only way to store costumes which are too fragile to be hung. And this is a very good example of something that's too fragile to be hung. As you can see here, there are tears up around the shoulder area where it was hanging. And the silk has just gotten to a point where it's just too fragile and cannot withstand that kind of weight. So this is something that is suitable for box storage. Now, boxes, as we discussed earlier, come in paper as well as in plastic coroplast. However, we're going to be using an acid-free box today to work with. And here I have a box that's partially set up. The other items you're going to need besides the box itself is a muslin sling or an acid-free paper sling, as well as tissue to stuff your garment with. Now, the sling is extremely important, and basically this is just a piece of washed muslin, and it acts as a way to get items in and out of your box easily. And as you can see here, I have several items packed in here. I have this red dress, and then I have a full christening outfit with the slip and the dress and the coat. And I have 2 pairs of shoes, neatly wrapped here. And what I like about this process of using the sling is that I can actually pick everything up at once and pull it out and easily look and see what all the layers are that are inside. Let me move this for a minute. And you can see, I can see all the items here, as well as if there's only one piece here. Now, when you're beginning to choose a box for storage, you have to make sure it's going to fit on your shelf and also fit the textiles that are going into it. And I'm just going to fold this back up here and put it back into our box.
So I decided to show you a few videos, and I cut them so they are shorter than on YouTube. Not only because they speak and show better than I will improvise now, but also I want to say that on YouTube now, on the internet, there are so many videos from everybody and from everywhere. And if you want to learn how to do stuff, choose the most well-known museums to learn from them. And this is the Minnesota Historical Society Museum, and they really show good, they have good videos. This is an example of storage cabinets and shelves, and here it's in the Jewish Museum, New York, and you can see here there are Torah mantles. They are covered with washed textiles, and all this cabinet is closed with like kind of a curtain, but it's not like free. It's on Velcro all around, so it prevents from dirt. And this is storage of rolled textiles, which are on metal rods, and it's a wonderful storage.
What kind of textiles?
Different. It's Jewish Museum, New York, so probably parochet or cloth for bima. Different. It can be also carpets, but connected to Jewish life somehow. Storage cabinets and shelves use acid-free materials, acid-free tissue paper, rolls on tubes. If they are not acid-free, they should be covered with acid-free paper or fabric. Acid-free boxes. Pre-wash all fabrics for packing, cushioning, or mounting textiles before use, like dust covers, linings, tube covers. This is example from the storage of Israel Antiquities Authority. Storage of small flat textiles. Small textiles can be stored in boxes or on shelves and drawers. Put padded support if needed that facilitates their safe storage and handling. Handles at both ends of the support facilitate handling without having to touch the object. If possible, limit the stacking of textiles. Heavier textiles should be underneath the light. So here you see flat box from corrugated acid-free carton and archaeological textile in acid-free paper. And I show different stages how we put it, covered with acid-free paper. And, oops, sorry. And here it's already covered with paper. And this I showed because we in the corners we put some spaces while constructing the box so that the lid, when it's closed, will not press on textile. Storing small textiles in boxes or rolled. Larger textiles. In large drawers, if possible, to store flat or with folds, as less as possible folds. This is a photograph from Jewish Museum, New York. It's my photographs. I was there and was impressed by their storage. And for example, these are drawers, you see, for large flat textiles. What's interesting that the bottom of each drawer is a strong netting for ventilation. To prevent tight folds, pad them out with crumpled acid-free tissue. Store large textiles such as quilts and rugs rolled. Storing costumes. Hang costumes on padded hangers or store them flat if they are very fragile, heavy, or beaded. And here we'll see again the movie, the video, how to do padded hangers. I can say that actually it can be work for a volunteer of museum, so that conservator will not use his precious time for this, but conservator should teach the volunteer how to do it. 1 second. Oops.
Padded hangers are created with a polypropylene plastic hanger base. Now, some people like to use a wooden hanger. I don't recommend this. Wooden hanger has harmful materials which will damage your textiles, so do not use them. The other materials that you'll need when you're creating a padded hanger is the needle punch felt, as well as a piece of the cotton stockinette tubing. And all of these items are described in the materials podcast.
This is strange.
Now, the first thing you need to do when you're creating a padded hanger is to cut the needle punch felt or batting. And the way you do that is you take your hanger and you just simply lay it down on the needle punch felt or batting so that the width extends down in front of you. And then you can see it's from end to end, and I just cut down here horizontally, and I have a strip. Once that's done, I lay my hanger down, and then I just gently wrap this over tightly, and I measure to this point here. Once that's done, I make a slit up the felt from bottom to where that point is that I measure, right up here. And I already cut this so that I can show you it's two pieces. It's almost like two legs. Once that's done, you can actually wrap the padding around your plastic hanger. And this is a little tricky. You may have to do it a couple times to get it right. The nice thing about the padding is that it kind of molds as you pull on it. And so you want to get it kind of taut. You don't want any folds in it like that. And you just kind of want to work it down until it covers all the way to the end. You can see I have a little bit of that showing still. Wrap that around. And I've got a little bit of bulkiness. I'm going to fold that under and wrap it around so that it's all taut again. and bring it around the front. Now I'm going to do the same to the other side. Wrap it around. Again, bring it up a little bit there. This stuff is really stretchy. When you get that kind of an extra kind of overage, you can just fold it under. Now your goal here is to make a soft, cushioned surface. And this is a fairly nicely wrapped, soft, cushioned surface. It's not perfect, it just needs to be a soft, cushioned surface. Once you wrap the hanger with the polyester needle punch felt or batting, you want to take a piece of the tube fabric, the cotton knit stockinette that we talked about earlier, and I like to cut a piece that is longer than my hanger by at least 3.5 inches on either side. Once that's done, I fold it in half, and I take my scissor and make a very, very small nick at the top. Just about 1/8 of an inch. And the reason it's so small is because that little nick will grow as you put this covering onto your hanger. The next part is kind of persnickety. It's like putting on a pair of pantyhose almost. You have to wrap, keep your batting in the same place, and extend your cotton knit stockinette over it. Find that hole and punch that hole through the top, like I did right there, and then extend it on the other side. Now, I simply take my ends and tuck them in the bottom. Now, these are storage hangers. They are not show hangers. And that's why I don't take the time to get really fussy with how they look on the ends, because it doesn't really matter.
איפה רואים את הוידאו הזה? זה גם הוידאו הזה ממינסודה?
I think one more left. No, they have many, but I chose fragments from few. Storage of shoes made from fabric, hats, gloves, and more. The shape of three-dimensional items like shoes and hats can be retained in storage by lightly stuffing them with crumbled acid-free tissue. Shapes that correspond to the bottoms of shoes can be cut from stable plastic foam plank and attached to plastic trays or boxes. Provide for adequate space on the mount so that the shoes are not touching each other. Cotton tapes can be used to secure the shoes to their support. Hats are best stored on mounts that elevate the brim of the storage shelf while fully supporting both the brim itself and the crown. A variety of methods and materials can be used to make hat mounts. If the mounts are neatly made and covered with a display fabric, they can be used for both storage and display. Here you can see Torah mantle from the Jewish Museum in New York, and it has this support inside. These photographs comes from costume conservation from Metropolitan Museum. It actually doesn't matter, but just nice. And you see the filling for the head, and this foam that is fixed together with this, and a little pillow that the silk ribbon is fixed on it. So when you transfer the head from one spot to another, you don't touch it. You hold this, and no ribbons are in the air. Everything is fixed. This is a pair of shoes from fabric, and you see that there is a niche cut in some foam, and shoes don't touch each other, and so that they can be transported without touch. How to roll the textile. Rolling a tapestry for storage or transportation. Acid-free cardboard tube should be 5 or 10 centimeters longer than width of the rolled textile. If your tube is not acid-free, you should protect with mylar, acid-free tissue, or pre-washed cotton sheeting or cotton stockinette. And what's important that you roll so that back side of the carpet of tapestry is inside and the right side is outside. Wrapping and rolling the carpet back side in, face out. Here you can see a tissue paper that goes under the carpet, let's say, or this textile, and here a tissue paper that goes like a bit off the carpet, so you have it fixed on the carpet, and it's at the same time it will be a wrapping. Carpets are rolled with the pile on the outside with tissue paper following the direction of the pile so that it does not become crushed. If to insert a solid metal rod through the tube, the rolled carpets can be supported on special stand. We've seen this on the other slide from Jewish Museum. The stand or the cupboard without doors should be covered with pre-washed cotton or Tyvek to protect the rolled textile from light or dust. We've seen it also before. Labels and color photos of the textile can be attached to the tube. Another video, maybe the last one if you are bored.
Cold storage is a good way to store textiles. It prevents any creasing that may occur during folded storage. It's a great way to store large items that are too big to put into a box or, say, too thick to fold. And if you have a textile that's too fragile, it can be wrapped safely around a tube. Now, if you're considering rolling a very large textile, like a tapestry or a larger rug, I would suggest that you call a conservator to get some extra guidelines. Within the museum community, we like to use acid-free tubes for rolled storage. And I have 3 to show you here that come in a small, a medium, and a large. And these tubes can get very large, up to 10 inches. Now, the thing about these tubes is that they're extremely expensive. And for that reason, many smaller institutions prefer to use a regular paper tube that I have here, this brown paper. Now, this paper has acid in it, and it will harm your textile. And for that reason, the paper tube has been covered with a barrier called marble seal. And I have a roll of it right here. And when I unroll it, if you see here, there is a shiny side and a matte side. And the matte side can go straight down on the paper tube and be secured with a warm iron. And you just iron it on, and it just secures to it greatly. Just marries very, very well. Then you want to be sure to wrap it over the edge. And in this way, you've created a barrier between your acidic tube and the marble seal. And what that does is it prevents any kind of water vapor or off-gassing to emit through it. And one more option. Say you don't have marble seal available to you, but you do have the polyester film Melanex. It too can be wrapped around the tube and act as a barrier against water vapor or off-gassing. The only thing about this is that it's a rather slippery product. So you have to be sure that you get it wrapped around and secured with a piece of double-stick tape. And the other thing is that this material will rip. So be careful not to rip it while you are rolling and unrolling your textile. One final warning. Polyvinyl chloride tubes, or PVC tubes, are exceedingly dangerous to textiles. They emit harmful off-gassing materials that will damage your textiles, so please don't ever use them. Now I'm ready to wrap up this rug with a piece of acid-free tissue. You can also use a piece of undyed washed muslin. And what this is going to do is just encapsulate the entire package and act as a barrier against light, dirt, and any pest infestation. And once again, I'm going to use the actual textile now, the rug here, as a header itself, and place this tissue inside. And I'm just going to wrap it gently around. And just wrap it all the way up. Now that the tube is all wrapped up, I just want to fold over the ends. And that just effectively seals up the package, and I want to actually secure it with some polyester ribbon. People use cotton twill tape as well, but the polyester ribbon acts just fine, and it's not as expensive as the cotton twill tape. Whenever you're tying any kind of tape, ribbon, whatever, around your piece, you want to be sure that you're not tying it too tight. You don't want to strangle the piece. You want to be able to actually put your finger in between there. You just want to hold everything in place. And I am out of the ribbon, so I'm going to use this piece here. And wrap this around. Now that we have this package, where are we going to put it? The thing about rolled storage is that within institutions, we often have large racks, and they sit very nicely on the rack on either end, and they're supported above. You don't want to place this on a shelf because all the weight is along this line here, and that is a lot of weight along a very small part of the textile. And that can actually break down that area over time by crunching all of those fibers. Now, if you don't have large storage systems, like a bigger institution, you can make cradles to put these items on.
Now I want to talk about display system, Velcro support system, which is the best when you are hanging large tapestries or carpets. This is, for example, how we were hanging tapestry in Yad Vashem, and it's very important to have support of few people to not to damage the textile. This is the way how to sew Velcro. I'm not going into details, conservators know this, but again, I want to say that many videos on YouTube exist, and just choose the most well-known museums. Sometimes the textile, the large textile can be so fragile that Velcro support from the top is not enough. This is an example of the Italian Museum of Jewish Art, where I did the restoration of the most ancient dated parochet in the world, 1572. And because it was extremely fragile, I decided to do additional Velcro support all around, and also along the width, let's say. Cleaning is very important to prevent deterioration. Textiles should be vacuum cleaned through a screen to prevent any damage, or the nozzle of the vacuum cleaner should be covered with the netting. Examination before wet cleaning. It doesn't matter where you are giving it to some outside source to clean, or you are doing it like the conservator of the museum does it. You need to check the old patches cows may run, check the label. Sometimes it's better to remove the label during cleaning, and check cows for stability. This is example from Chevalier Conservation and Cleaning Workshop in Paris. Every time I was going somewhere, I always fixed an appointment in advance so that I could learn from every country, every museum. So this was very interesting. Labeling on textiles. Marks should not be made directly on the fabrics. The process of labeling should never cause harm to the object. Its location should be easy to find, yet be in a place not to be seen while the object is on exhibition. In placing labels, you must often employ your common sense, like not only in placing labels, but in this case, yes. The writing should be as small as possible and at the same time as clearly as possible. Never use metal clips for keeping some notes or label. It's not at somebody's home, believe me. It's in the storage. Materials for labeling. Use black, waterproof, fade-proof, and does not bleed pen. White, plain with 100% cotton tape, 10 millimeters wide, not adhesive, non-adhesive, and without starch. White or black fine 100% cotton sewing thread and fine needles. Where to label? I'm entering this subject rather like in details because very often volunteers are doing this, and it's very important to know how to do it, and so that conservator will teach them or they will find a good source how to do it. Clothing with where to label. Clothing with a neckline inside center back of neck. Clothing with a waistline inside center of waistband. Hats inside center back where crown and brim meet. Flat, long, or large textiles, I suggest 2 labels, back lower right and upper left corners, in order to find it easier, not to unroll till you find the label, thinking about touching textile as less as possible. Fragile or fragmented textiles that cannot withstand stitching on storage support. Method of labeling. Use permanent marker, ultrafine Sharpie and twill tape. Write the number on the tape, wash it, as if washing hands really well. Then blot, rub it till damp, and then iron it to be sure ink is set. Stitch to the textile. Stitch all around to avoid anyone or anything catching on the label. Leave about 6.5 millimeters on each side to fold underneath. This saves the edges from frailing. Sew the label so that it will not cause damage to the object. When making stitches, be sure not to pierce fibers. Instead, sew between fibers through the gap in the weave. There are different instructions, but that's what I follow. Now we are coming to insects, fumigation. So if the object is relatively small in the storage, let's say, and you notice that it's infected, put it into the plastic bag, seal it with tape, and no, I wouldn't say storage, somewhere else, just one object is infected, put it into the plastic bag, seal it with tape, and put in the freezer minus 20 degrees Celsius for a week. If the storage is infected, you need to ask the professional to come and to do the treatment. Very important to know what is the method and what is healthy for textiles. On this photograph, you see oily drops. So once I was invited to a storage of textiles, and I was in shock because every shelf was covered with these oily drops, and of course every textile that was exposed to air, it was not packed, was oily. It was terrible. Fumigation. An effective method of pest control is fumigation, when a closed area is filled with fumes containing specific chemicals. Some chemicals may be dangerous for art objects and human health. So in different countries there are national protocols that define what chemicals can be used. Fumigation must be performed by a professional having an official license and familiar with the protocol. The Israeli protocol is named Doach Pilat. For textiles, it's important to use dry fumes because some humid fumes leave oily drops that can damage objects. Handling during conservation. It's very important to provide the conservator with comfortable professional tables and frames. It will prevent from unwanted moving, touching, and damaging the textile. Just to tell you that this photograph I took from conservation workshop in Paris, in Chevalier workshop. Conclusion. Preventive conservation is part of modern museum collection management. Large museums have conservators on the staff to monitor the objects' condition and recommend best storage and conservation procedures. Volunteers may be helpful, but they should be instructed by a conservator before they ever touch textiles. Small museums that cannot afford a permanent conservator should invite one periodically to monitor textiles and recommend specific procedures if needed. Preventive conservation is very important. It needs funds, but it also saves money, preventing damage to objects and thus avoiding much larger expenses for serious post-damage conservation. Thank you.